In a game where the Florida Panthers did not play well in the first 40 minutes with a lot of odd man rushes and Sergei Bobrovsky keeping it close, the Florida Panthers used 3 minutes and 29 seconds in the third period to come back in this one and take the 2 regulation points.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, March 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12, follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And Panther fans, I'm really thankful to be coming on here discussing a win where the Florida Panthers defeat the Dallas Stars by a final score of 4-3, where they trailed by 3. Midway through the third period, and then score 4 unanswered to get the 2 points in regulation in a game in which the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars, this could be a preview of the Stanley Cup final, but it is a Wednesday, which means it is a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. Jacob Winans is back and here to break down a regulation comeback win by the Florida Panthers, something that we don't see often with the Florida Panthers based on their style of play and their identity. But Jacob, after a rough 40 minutes for the Panthers, they found a way.
Yeah, they don't fall behind that often, so we don't see a whole lot of opportunities for comebacks. But yeah, this one felt like the President's Trophy winning version of the Panthers a couple years ago. Not the most sustainable way to play, and not something we should get used to, but it is exciting when it happens. The Panthers definitely aren't pleased with their first 35, 40 minutes of that game. Did a whole lot that they don't usually do. We figured that it would take a little bit of an adjustment, being without Aaron Ekblad for the next couple of weeks, and then also being without Evan Rodriguez. And in his place, they're acclimating a brand new piece in Kyle Okposo. Josh Mahura was a little bit slow getting started. He hasn't played in a while. So there were some factors that were a little out of the Panthers' control with their slow start. But yeah, they bounced back. They found their game in the third, and I don't think we can overstate just how big of a win that is for morale and just for the belief on the team, because Dallas is a team that they don't do that very often. When Dallas gets a lead, they tend to hold on to it. They don't give up those kind of leads, especially a lead that large with more than half of the game already over. So super impressive win. And before we go any further into the Dallas game today, I do have to point out I was in the building for the Panthers game against Calgary. We won 5-1. My streak is over. So all you guys can stop hating on me every time I go to the arena. I'm not bad luck anymore. I just have to put that out there.
Great way for you to start your opening statement here on the show, my friend. But with the Florida Panthers, I mean, yeah, let's talk about the things that were out of control for the Cats when it came to although OEL and Forsling have been paired together in the first 16 games, I mean, you think about the miscommunications that were happening with the Panthers and all, and even Mahura and Kulikov, which that was the pinch by Kulikov, and then Mahura committing to one side led to that 2-0 that resulted in Joe Pavelski's goal. And then literally not even 2 minutes after, I mean, Bobby prevented it from going 2-0 when Mikkola and Montour were out of position too on one side. And the Panthers, I mean, odd man rushes. I mean, another one where Atulu went to the box that prevented a 2-on-1. That was a possible breakaway goal that he stopped too. And I mean, the Panthers, I mean, they were starting to get some of their momentum throughout the first 7 minutes, and then they go to the box. Kulikov is the one that goes to the box, too, for the Panthers. But really, I mean, you think about getting some gifts too, that the Dallas Stars got, but I mean, some of the gifts that the Dallas Stars gave the Panthers. I mean, one of them was on an icing that Mahura was going back for, and then the whistle blows. Doesn't seem like Mason Marchment uh, the heard the whistle, and then that resulted in a roughing penalty for him, and then Panthers take advantage there too. So even though there was a lot of gifts from the officials to the Dallas Stars, I mean, there was a breakaway where Brandon Montour got hurt. Gustav Forsling got high sticked after a rebound opportunity too, and all. And Matthew Tkachuk, I believe I felt that he was tripped, excuse me, at the very beginning of the third period, and then Verhaeghe goes to the box shortly after too. So, I mean, the fact that the Panthers really weathered storms in multiple ways as far as preventing the odd man rushes in the third period, too. And I mean, think about how they set the tone too. With even though it was a knuckler by Sam Reinhart, you had three guys around him. That one goes to the net. You get somewhat closer for the Panthers. Not thinking comeback at that time, but you know, maybe the tide was starting to turn. But I mean, it really it really didn't. I didn't really start to believe it until later on.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the Panthers issues and a lot of the Dallas is a team that's going to capitalize on some of those self-inflicted things, and I think the Panthers really shot themselves in the foot a lot to begin that game. The Mahura Kulikov miscommunication, it's tough to blame it on them too much because they haven't played with each other a ton, especially as of late. There's going to be some lapses in communication, and you just hope they're not catastrophic, and that one unfortunately was. Results in a 2-0 and almost a surefire goal, and Dallas does bury that chance. They're not a team that's gonna miss on those. Beyond that, I feel like it was a lot of penalties. There were some calls that you kind of scratch your head about a little bit. In particular, the penalty that gets Dallas their second goal. Didn't really like that one. The call on Kulikov, especially when right before. Etu gets dragged down on a breakaway by his arm, and it's like
by Tanev. Yep.
Yeah, by Tanev right there on that breakaway, and it's kind of ridiculous. But that's going to happen. You're not going to get every call. Some of them are going to be a little bit unbalanced, and you're gonna have to fight through that. And the Panthers did that tonight. And you tend to get the calls when you move your feet. And I feel like the Panthers were a little bit stagnant to begin the game. They weren't getting the calls because they weren't putting themselves in the best positions to get the calls. And in the third period, that really changed. You saw guys active. You saw guys getting in physically, getting more engaged in the board battles, and that's where you start to get some of those stick infractions. Tkachuk getting tripped in the third period on the power play where the Panthers end up taking the lead. That's purely hustle and effort. If you're not moving your feet there, you don't get that trip, you don't get that call, and it doesn't result in a goal. So I feel like the tide started to turn with the calls as soon as the effort started to turn with the Panthers, and those tend to go hand in hand. But beyond that, I thought the fight was great. The effort was great. After being down 3-0, a lot of teams, especially teams in the Panthers position where you don't necessarily need the 2 points against a Western Conference opponent. On paper, you can say there's not a ton to play for there, but that's not the mentality and the identity of this team. They fought back, and every game is important to them. Every 2 points is important. You see important players blocking shots, throwing themselves in front of those point shots, protecting the crease. That's what you want to see this time of year. Even games against Western Conference opponents that you don't think mean as much right now. That is definitely a team I could see them playing against in the Stanley Cup final. And Dallas, they are every bit of a contender. So I was impressed with the fight. I thought the second half of that game was pretty special to watch.
Yeah, and you think about with the Dallas Stars and how well they were moving off the puck with their speed, and that was really what was making the Florida Panthers pay too, and also the forwards not communicating back, and that's something that Kyle Okposo spoke about during his first intermission interview too. So it's really all about adjusting, and I mean, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but if this was a Stanley Cup final matchup too. And you're seeing how well they're using their speed. I mean, this is something that easier said than done. When you could recognize what they're doing off the puck, and also to have your head more on a swivel going into the final period, which the Florida Panthers did do. I mean, the Calgary Flames were playing their not Calgary Flames, Dallas Stars were playing their prevent defense. They weren't using their speed. I mean, they didn't have. You would think that with that much of a lead, that they wouldn't have to start continue to push. And I mean, there was actually one mistake that the Panthers made. OEL loses his stick. Barkov goes to help him out, and then it leads to a rush for Rope Hin. So that was an example of forward staying back, even though it's in the defensive zone, not in the at their offensive blue line too. So that's another example about some of the miscues that the Florida Panthers had in this one. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about our 3 stars of the game and when we thought this game was won or lost. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. And we're past the 3/4 mark of the season. And regardless of where the Florida Panthers are at in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number 1 choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy contests. All you need to do is pick whether studs like Connor McDavid, Alex Ovechkin, Nathan McKinnon, Sam Reinhart, if they'll score more or less, their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8-player stats. You heard me, Cats fans. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Also, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof rack, exhaust kits, and LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With 122 million parts of your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Segment number 2 here on this Wednesday, March 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, where the Florida Panthers are coming off a 4-3 road regulation win, comeback edition, where they score 3 goals in 3 minutes and 29 seconds in the third period to come back against a really, really great hockey team. And Paul Maurice, he defeated his friend in Pete DeBoer. That's another thing of note in that one. I wonder what their dinner is going to be, if they haven't had their dinner. I don't know if they had their dinner last night or later tonight, or, well, they're traveling tomorrow. But regardless of all that, 3 stars of the game, Jacob, for me. The NHL site has this a little bit different as far as what I have for this one, which is what makes this great. It's our personal 3 stars. But Sergei Bobrovsky, single game save percentage on this one says 900 for the evening for Bobrovsky. But what he did as far as stopping that second that breakaway shortly after it went to 1-0, and then right on the PK when Carter Verhaeghe went to the box, that incredible backdoor stop on Matt Duchene with the blocker to go left to right from the blue line, and with some bodies in front too. The fact that he was still able to have that great vision through the screen. But that's not and I don't want to get too much ahead, but that is not my moment of when I thought this game was won or lost, by the way. That is not my moment for me. But still, he has to be the number one star because he prevented this from getting any worse for the Panthers. Second start of the game is Aleksander Barkov for me. NHL.com actually changed the goal now, which was originally given to Carter Verhaeghe on from that wrister that Barkov redirected out in front. And here's the thing, Jacob: all three of the goals that the Florida Panthers scored in the third period were off the draw and cycling the puck and getting some possession and keeping the Dallas Stars on their toes. Barkov 2 goals, 1 assist on the night for 3 points, and also stealing another goal from Carter Verhaeghe. That's like the third time in the last few weeks. And the third one will be Matthew Tkachuk too. As far as like what he was doing as far as like working the offense, and also what they did differently on the power play as far as zipping that puck around. They were eyeing in on Reinhart, but still finding a way to keep the puck alive in the offensive zone. So those are my 3 stars of the game. How about yours, Jacob?
Yeah, so Bob definitely gets an honorable mention from me. On most nights, I'm giving him a star for his performance tonight. He was fantastic, kept the Panthers in it. And that's really all you can ask for from your goalie at times is limit the damage. You can't expect a shutout all the time. Can't expect him to make miraculous saves all the time. Just make a couple of them that at least keep you in the game. And that's exactly what he did tonight. So he's my honorable mention. My third star is actually it's going to be Sam Bennett. I think their line didn't necessarily have the best game. At 5-on-5, they weren't that productive. They weren't that effective. But in that third period, Sam Bennett really turned on his game. He was driving play, got to a dirty area with another deflection goal right in front of the net, which was almost identical to the goal he scored against Calgary the other night. Getting to the dirty areas, tipping pucks, making his presence felt physically. That's what you want to see out of Sam Bennett. But what really brought him from honorable mention to third star for me was in the third period. There was one particular play where Sam Bennett laid out for a block, put himself completely on the line, blocks a shot, and limps to the bench. And seeing that shot, the Panthers were kind of pinned in their own zone. It didn't look like they were going to get out of it. He lays out, blocks a shot, and he was laboring getting off, but that really said something to me because it's a game that the Panthers, like I said earlier, it's not a do or die type of game. It's not a game you really need in the standings if you think about it. But that's your second line center, a guy who's had some injury issues, a guy who has every right in his mind to preserve himself for playoffs. And he's laying out and sending the message that every game is important and he's willing to put his body on the line. So back-to-back games with a greasy goal and then the shot blocking, the effort. Love to see that from our 2C. So I'm giving a third star to Sam Bennett. Second star is Matthew Tkachuk. The point production's there. The assists are piling up at this point. He's become a great distributor. On the power play goal from Sam Reinhart, he and Barkov actually kind of switched spots, same result. But Tkachuk's versatility and his passing is at another level right now. But he gets a star for me because he also drew a massive penalty. Again, sacrificing the body, taking the hit, getting uncomfortable. It's rewarding him now with points, but he's been doing that all season, even when the points weren't coming at the beginning of the year. And Tkachuk gets a second star for me. First star is going to be Aleksander Barkov. Like you said, he stole another goal from Carter Verhaeghe. He is single-handedly driving Verhaeghe's contract extension price down with every goal he steals. He's making a habit of it, tipping those Verhaeghe shots just a little bit, and then pretending like he had nothing to do with it and celebrating with Verhaeghe as if Verhaeghe scored. Anyone who's played hockey, if your stick touches a puck in any way, you know it.
You know it.
You can feel it. So Barkov is now 3 times tipped the puck in the net, knowing he scored, and celebrates like he didn't. I think that's hilarious. But he's the goal production is starting to come for Barkov, and we were concerned about it for a while. He had a pretty lengthy goal drought, but he scored 2 tonight, scored 1 in Calgary. He's starting to pick up the goals now. If you can get him going offensively, not just with the passing, but also with the goal production, I think he could be the most dangerous player in the league come playoff time, because he's already so big and strong. He's already the best defensive forward in the sport. Barkov is starting to take on a level of assertiveness that we've been looking for from him ever since he really flashed that in the playoffs last year. I'm starting to see it again now, and it's really good timing. This is when you want to see it. So Barkov's my first star.
Yeah, and we're 66 games through, just 14 left as far as that, and we're seeing it turn on for Aleksander Barkov, and just you love to see it as far as that, and how well they were just zipping that puck around high to low to get it to Barkov, too, on that one that was redirected off the skate. That even it's funny because Barkov was rewarded with a goal that was tipped off him, but he didn't admit it. And then there was one where we thought originally that was Matthew Tkachuk on a threading of the needle there, and just trying to put something out in front and hoping that it sticks, and hoping that there's some type of redirection, and then it pays off. So great night by El Capitan. As in Dallas, I believe it was Mexican Heritage Night too there. Which fun fact, Octavio Sequeira, the old Spanish play-by-play announcer for the Florida Panthers, he was actually calling the game tonight in Dallas. So big shout out to him, former guest of the show. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3. We're going to discuss more about what Paul Maurice said post-game, and what some of the rest of the players have said, and also maybe discuss some global series coming up where these two will meet again in Tampere, Finland. We're going to discuss that and more here on Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use point spreads, money lines. You can pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the net. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV with the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Segment number 3 here on this Wednesday, March 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. Florida Panthers coming off a 4-3 comeback win over the Dallas Stars. And one thing I really want to talk about, Jacob, especially something that stood out, because it took me back to a specific moment last year. And this is the quote that Paul Maurice said post-game, that says, "It's really important to carry with you. It wasn't about winning, and we found a way to play our game." Close quote. That is from Paul Maurice. And he's basically saying, the way I interpret it is, you don't play your best game. You're in a hostile environment with one of the best teams. The Bally Sports post game crew spoke about it, how the Dallas Stars were 22-2 going into the third period with a lead. So this is a rarity of the Florida Panthers getting a win when they went in 2-13-0. But it also takes me back to when right as the New Year struck in 2023, Florida Panthers were at home against the New York Rangers, don't play well in their first 40 minutes, and then they start getting their game going in the final 20. And Paul Maurice at the time, in a losing effort, spoke about how well they liked their third period, and then how much that could carry them throughout that week and even in months. And look what happened. Look what it resulted in. And as far as getting to their game, those are key words as far as that. The Panthers, they got back to their game of aggressive forechecking and just winning battles along the walls too when it comes to that. So, and yes, once again, the Dallas Stars had more to lose tonight than the Florida Panthers because Colorado, they were beating up on Calgary last time I checked. I believe last time I checked it was 6-2. So big battle out in the Central Division for positioning too. And Florida came into this one with a point ahead of Boston with 2 games in hand too. So the fact that they got back to their game in a winning effort too, and Paul Maurice was not necessarily impressed, but I would say content more of getting back to who they were after some sloppiness. I think that's what really stuck out to me in what was said post game.
Yeah, and then to kind of double down on that, what really stuck out to me in his post game was he was talking about how it wasn't about winning; it was about getting back to the way they play, and that they weren't happy with how they came out. But what stuck with me with those comments was he didn't feel like they could afford to finish the game the way they started it because they wouldn't be able to sleep for 2 days. And that says to me like it's a team that yes, they care about winning, they care about the result, but they also care about doing things the right way and not cheating the game and sticking to just kind of the commitment to buying in. And I feel like the start of that game that wasn't Panthers hockey, and everyone knew it. Paul Maurice knew it, and they weren't happy with that. And if they continued to play that way, they would have been struggling with that for 2 days. And that's just that's the culture that they're building here. An off night is not really acceptable when it comes to effort. You're going to have off nights. You're going to lose games. Every game's not going to be a win, but the effort level has to be consistent. And I think and you can't accept off nights where you're just not trying hard. And I feel like the Panthers, the effort level wasn't there, the attention to detail wasn't there, and that's what they don't accept. And it's not just Paul Maurice preaching that. The players have complete buy-in with that. And even I feel like even if they didn't win the game, I think we would have been happy with the response they had in that third period. Even if they came up short, getting back to the way they play, putting up the fight and the effort, I feel like we would have been happy with that. But getting 2 points in regulation, that's the icing on the cake there. But like you said, a point ahead of Boston, 2 games in hand. It's textbook game they could afford to lose, and they simply would not let it happen for lack of effort. If they lost trying hard and putting up the fight of their lives in that third period, then I think you'd live with that. But they weren't going to lose 2 points because of lack of effort. That was never going to happen. And Paul Maurice's comments echoed that. And like you said, Dallas had a lot to lose with that one. Colorado did beat Calgary 7-2. That was the final out there. And they're in a tight race. So it's not like the Panthers took advantage of an opponent that was sleepwalking through the third. That's a team that really, really needed 2 points, and they didn't get it.
Yeah, after 3-0 and you don't come out with anything after that, that's just crushing. If you're the Dallas Stars, and the thing is the thing is for these two, I mean, they're just they're just both built to win, and I hope we get 7 games of these. But if it happens to be this in the Stanley Cup final, because it looks like that the roles have flipped as far as what's the tougher conference to go to, as far as to get out of this year in the postseason. As far as that, so they're going to go through a gauntlet, and these guys are going to meet again for 2 consecutive days in Finland, which the NHL officially announced, which November 1st and 2nd in Tampere, Finland, Barkov's hometown, in the arena that the team that he and his dad own in Tampere. Which, funny enough, I searched for flights. There is the best way to get there is to get through Helsinki and then find a way an hour to Tampere. Just already kind of looking at that a little bit, but also the excitement level that is there, knowing that these two teams are going to see each other again, and also what's coming ahead too, when you see what's on the other side with Miro Heiskanen, Rupe Hintz, Asa Lindell for the Dallas Stars side of things. I think I think I don't know if this is the end of seeing these two in a meaningful hockey setting. I hope it's not just up ahead in the global series. Any thoughts on just the marketing that is going to happen between these two teams and just the stars that are here, or even um, how it could be set up for something in the future?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting on a couple of different levels. I think tonight is, after announcing that officially, I think tonight was a excellent display. Tonight's game was free promo essentially for what that's going to be, because these are two really really good teams, and I guarantee all of Finland was watching the game tonight just to get a taste of what they could see. And if this ends up being a Stanley Cup series, uh, those two games next season get all the more important. Imagine having two games between the Stanley Cup opponents in Finland. That would be absolute box office. And Dallas was the team that I picked to come out of the West to go to the Stanley Cup. That's a really really good team. So it's tonight was a preview of some pretty good hockey that we're going to get either in the Stanley Cup or next year in Finland. But first thoughts, I'm so super happy for Barkov getting to play in such a special place for him. He's not a guy who shows his emotions on his sleeve too much. He's very even keel, but you could tell he was excited talking about it. He said he never dreamed of ever playing an NHL game in his hometown. That's pretty thrilling. He also said he was there when the Panthers went to Finland in 2009. I believe Ville Koistinen was a goal scorer in that one, and he was a hometown guy.
He was the only Finn on that team too.
Yep.
So
and this time around, the Panthers market a bunch of Finnish talent. You've got Barkov, you've got Lundell, you've got Eetu Luostarinen, you've got Nico Mikkola. There's some serious Finnish talent on the Panthers side, the Star side. Hintz, Heiskanen, Lundell. There's so much Finnish talent. And last time the Panthers played in Finland, it was against Winnipeg. That back to back was more to market Patrick Laine. This time around, it's clearly Barkov centric, and that's super exciting. I'm hoping we get an outdoor game at some point, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. I think this is great. And like yourself, I was also looking at flights today because I gotta see if I can find a way to make that trip happen. Immediately after the official announcement came out, before I even saw it, my girlfriend, who loves to travel, is texting me, "Can we go to Finland?" And I'm like, "What are we going to Finland for?" And she sends me the post from NHL Europe. I was like, makes sense. Well, I'll go anywhere for hockey, so we might have to look into some flights here off camera. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, hopefully, but the almighty dollar is the ultimate thing too.
Yeah.
But I mean, Patrick Laine was amazing in that. Connor Hellebuck started both games, I remember, and it was a mix of Luongo and James Reimer at the time. I mean, so much has changed since.
Yeah.
But what a way as far as previewing that global series, which won't be for another 8 months. So it's gonna be a fun time, and get ready for early morning hockey too. But hey, it's better to wake up with some sports instead of waiting all day too. So that's gonna be the fun part of that.
Yeah, and you know what? If either of these teams have any Finnish free agents they'd like to target over the offseason, this is the sales pitch. If there's anyone from Finland as a free agent, this is a place you want to be.
That too. So, Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me once again on another edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, comeback edition for the Cats as they win 4-3 at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8, and you can see me hopefully at some more Panthers games now that my curse is broken.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. And I will see you next week, my friend, on a non-Panthers game day. So see you next week, my friend.
Can't wait. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to your team every day.